Hitler on the one hand, but not only offensive, but just completely misguided. I mean, if Vladimir Zhirinovsky had come to power, that might be an appropriate comparison. But we are taught that Vladimir Putin is much more like George W. Bush. They would have been, much more comparable in character here. And what's more, the chronology doesn't make sense. When Vladimir Putin came to power, the first several years of his tenure, he tried to cooperate with the Western powers. It's only after about 2004, 2005 that he turns to what can be construed as an anti-Western policy. He's unboarded the Americans in the first. Hitler was not like that. Hitler pursued an anti-Western, anti-Allied policy from the start. I just don't think this is a good comparison.
We take a few questions.
I think that we're also going to ask that you just identify yourself.
Matthew Rendell, University of Nottingham.
Thank you. Sorry, it makes it easier.
So the next question. Yes.
Thank you. My name is Adanitis from the University of Ljubljana, from Greece. I have two questions actually. The first one is for Vincent. Your Irish?
Canadian.
Canadian.
Yeah, so
Okay.
probably originally Irish.
So, I share your view that Russia has a soft power and very efficient. But given the fact that Joseph Nye, soft power presented it as an instrument of the United States foreign policy, actually, do you consider that Russia having soft power is actually a middle power or an emerging superpower? And second question from Marina. There is a connotation for you between soft power and civil power because we use it for European Union as a civil power. And some people support the view that when you are soft power, when you are civil power, definitely you are soft power. But when you are soft power, that doesn't mean that you are civil power.
Next question. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Jon Berindan from Romania. I have a question for Vincent. So in your opinion, Russia tries to coagulate the anti-American sentiment so they can actually manage it at an international level? And about the soft power of authoritarian regimes, why are they bad? I mean, you can choose Singapore, for example, which is a very good one. Does your theory applies to other kinds of countries except China and Russia? Thank you.
Next question.
Hello, I'm Ljubljana. I'm a post-graduate student at the Medical Academy in Russia. I have two questions. First of them is to Mr. Milarski about your paper. I'd like to ask you about, what is the goal of this comparison? Because in my opinion, the ISIS, the Hitler's Germany and Russia, they have completely different goals, completely different ideologies. And this comparison, it is just some common feature in the economic situations, and that is it. And especially commenting the Chechen war, it's, in my opinion, it has nothing common with all events which happened in Germany, because it was the answer of the massacre of Russian people in Chechnya, so it was just the answer. And my second question is to Vasily Pavlov. I just wanted to know when you were talking about the phenomenon of the trolls, why have you chosen especially the Novaya Gazeta as an example? Because Novaya Gazeta is a very, it's one of the most, it's a very popular opposition resource in Russia. So I'm just interested, how do you know about it, and how much people abroad know about it in general? Thank you.
Thank you. I kindly ask you to respond briefly, and if you have a lot to discuss, I think we can take it to after the discussion. So please briefly respond so that we can go more questions.
Okay, well, let me, there's a commonality between the gentleman over here and your comment. That is, what was I trying to explain? Now, I was trying to explain election, but I also was trying to understand mass atrocity, how people can vote for somebody who either committed mass atrocity, or can be interpreted as mass atrocity, or would very likely do something very brutal, as Hitler was indicating in his speeches about the Jews and so forth. And ISIS does have a quality. I thought I didn't have enough time to do it, and I probably should have. That the quality that ISIS, the rise of ISIS, shares with the others, and even demonstrates more completely, is the coalescence of the territorial and the economic. That is, ISIS was solving the Sunni in western Iraq, and then ultimately eastern Syria, were solving their discrimination problems, either against Assad or originally against al-Maliki, by seizing new territory with oil, Mosul, for example. And so this coalescence of the economic and the territorial, there was a confluence in the case of Germany and Russia. In ISIS, it was actually even more pronounced. It was simultaneous. You seize the territory, then you solve both problems of discrimination by the Shia and your economic grievances, of which there were many by the Sunni against the Shia. And in terms of the goals, even though mass atrocity was something I was trying to understand, of course, ISIS is a good example of the commission of mass atrocity. Aside from that, they both were very desperate to increase their status in the world. And Putin has been very clear on that, about the concerns that he had about Russia's status, about the fear of reversion to the 200 to 300 years of subordination that I mentioned in the paper. And Hitler, too, was into revenge against the Jews. He blamed the Jews for the loss of World War I. And against the Allies, the Western Allies against Germany in World War I. So that the goal of increasing international status is in common to both Putin and
Okay, I think I can answer both questions for you gentlemen at once. I basically think, and that's probably the best message of the paper, that everybody can have soft power, so that it's not necessary to be the civil power. Maybe sometimes even contrary to be, you can be the tough guy and it makes you attractive. And also it doesn't necessarily have to be that the authoritarian regimes are bad to have soft power. I didn't mean to judge anyone if they find some values attractive. I simply think that if authoritarian regimes can sell their values to the audiences abroad, they simply do have the soft power and good for them. And I framed it into this bad guys, good guys, as, let's say, eye-opener, because I think that, as Vincent said, there is a power which we don't see. And that's not really strategic, because we are the good ones, and that's why we just have the soft power and the other don't. And I think it's not really strategic thinking, so that's why I just framed it. But I don't really think that you need to be a good guy or to have a soft power to be a civil power. So if this is the answer.
Well, referring to trolls and Novaya Gazeta, the information about trolls was first published on the website, was, if I remember correctly now the name of the website, and then it was investigated by Novaya Gazeta and Vedomosti. So I refer to Novaya Gazeta as being better known. But if you were implying if the Western audience know about Novaya Gazeta and other publications, probably that was actually the real question. Yeah, usually people who are focusing on Russia know about Novaya Gazeta, Dozhd, becomes slowly, so as kind of more reliable sources. And I would have not expected that this kind of investigation about trolls, like pro-governmental comments, to be published in a pro-governmental publication. So it was normal to be in an opposition publication, this kind of investigation.
Okay, so there was a question about the relationship between the potential power of soft power of Russia and its status as a middle power or a superpower or rising superpower. And I think the two issues are slightly independent of each other. Okay, and they're independent of each other. I mean, again, it depends on how you define middle powers versus superpowers, but I'm going with what I think is the classical definition. A middle power having regional scopes and regional aims and regional power projection, and the superpower having the global, scopes, aims, and power projection. And I think the important thing is that, soft power, when you can have it, makes, like Dr.Sc says, it makes your foreign policy easier. Okay, you get that followership, okay, so that people tend to go along with what it is that you want to do. And that will certainly help Russia. But, I come from Denmark, right? Denmark likes to talk about, well, maybe until very recently, how we had lots and lots of soft power. But having lots and lots of soft power unto itself is never going to make Denmark a superpower. Okay? So I would kind of separate out the analysis. Soft power helps Denmark in this case, probably do whatever foreign policy, limited foreign policy goals that it has. And it's good to have it if you can have it, but it's not going to dramatically affect, okay, transition status from middle to superpower. The other question was about, sorry, and I don't think I really understood it. Maybe I could get it again. It was something about how Russia and the anti-American values?
Yeah, they try to coagulate the anti-American sentiment at the world stage, so they become the excrement of the counterbalance for the American values.
Yeah, no, and I think we can agree with that. Me and my co-author, right? And that's the important thing, because there is an option that Russia, of course, has all of these conservative values, but then, of course, doesn't really do anything foreign policy related with it. Okay, but by having an explicit sort of, or counterbalancing the West message, they then become, okay, it actually helps them along in sort of attracting that followership. Because if you agree with some of their values, okay, you're probably not going to agree with the American values, and they're explicitly setting themselves up as the ones, right, that are doing it properly. So
it is an alternative to the American.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can go for another question. Yes.
I'm Professor Kukartseva in Diplomatic Academy of Minister of Russian Affairs for Russian Federation. I just want to separate the academical disciplines. For example, Professor Nye, we have in the Russian Federation a lot of theoretical works devoted to the soft power as it is and to the factors which intensified the effect of soft power in the modern international relations and the world politics. And some of these papers are already translated into other languages, and you could read about soft power of Russian Federation from the first hands. That is the first. The second, exactly this famous American politician Joseph Nye make the distinction between soft power, hard power, and stressed that it's necessary for a strong state to make a balance between hard power and soft power. And he called it smart power. And what do you think? Maybe Russian Federation managed to find this balance? And only one thing our country must decide now, how to develop this smart power. Because you know that without smart power, without soft power, you could not find the terrorist problem all over the world. Take into account these ISIS. You could not kill everybody because inside these terrorists there are a lot of children, women, a lot of ordinary people. How you want to deal with them? Only with a smart power. Education, medical treatment, culture. By the way, take a look at the Palmyra concert. It's a, I think, huge feature of our soft power. Why not? Now our painters from Academy for Art, they make a lot of pictures of this ruin of Palmyra for future generation. It's also main powerful form of country. And you know that there are such notion in the international relation power, and there are a lot of components of the power, and some military, natural borders, population, and so on and so on. And one of them are the most important is national spirit and effective diplomacy. And if we are speaking so much about effective diplomacy of Russian Federation, it means that we are powerful enough and exactly in the smart power.
Thank you.
Yes, and the last, what I want to say, that is really the last. You know that Mr. Hitler had made a genocide against population. Do you really, when you compare our president with Mr. Hitler, decide that Putin has, yes, that Mr. Putin ever did any genocide another against any people?